Good morning. So we are up to Shin Ayin Beis Seif Vav, working through the halachas of bias and chotzer and the karpuf and the gag. So some interesting stuff. Says the Mechaber, bias shebein shtei Chatzeros. So you got a house which is actually in between two Chatzeros, vu pasuach lishneihem, and it's open on to both of them. Ve'erav im shteihem. And he makes an error with both of them. But the Chatzeros don't make an error with each other. Okay, so let me just show you a picture. I've got a good picture in this book. Where is it? Yeah, here, look. So you've basically got two Chatzeros. You've got a chotz over here with two houses, a chotz over here with two houses. And then you've got a bias which straddles both Chatzeros. And one door opens to that chotzer, and one door opens to the chotzer. So if you take a look at picture number 17. Yeah, can you see that? Yeah. Is that what you're picturing? I don't know if you can see. Yeah, picture 17. So he's got the bias in the middle, and you've got a chotzer on that side, a chotzer on that side, and he can actually, the bias in the middle is open on both sides. So what does the Mechaber say? Bias shebein shtei Chatzeros v'pasuach lishneihem ve'erev im shteihem, and the middle guy makes an erev with both. But this chotzer does not make an erev with this chotzer. So says the Mechaber, ein letalzel kelim sheshovsu bebotim. You can't take kelim which on a shkia on erev Shabbos, a ben hashmoshes on erev Shabbos was residing in the bias in either chotzer. In other words, I can't take the kelim which were in that bias and take it through that house into that other thing. That's what the Mechaber means. Says the Mishnah. Let's do the Mishnah on that. Ein letaltel rotzolema afal gav the kelim sheshovsu b'bayis emtzoi. Even though the kelim which were in the middle house mutar letaltel l'shtei Chatzeros, because you made an eruv. V'chein me'abatim sheb'shtei Chatzeros elav, and so too you could take the kelim which were in the outer houses, the batim in the either chotzer into the middle house. Mikol mokum me'abatim sheb'chotzer zeh l'chotzer zeh alidei bayis hamtzoi osa. To take the kelim in the batim in the other either chotzer, to take it through the middle house and put it into the other chotzer, that's not allowed. So Chatzeros lo erev, because ultimately these two adjoining Chatzeros did not make an erev with each other, and therefore it doesn't work. Now that is only if the erev itself was not placed in the middle house. It was rather placed in the other houses in the other two Chatzeros. But if they actually put the erev in the middle house, then you actually, that has joined everything together, and you've got one big house, one big area. So in other words, what have we said? So you've got this setup where you've got two Chatzeros, and you've got batim in each one. Then you've got the house in the middle, which straddles both. So you're not allowed to take kelim from the bias on one chotzer through the house into the other chotzer, or vice versa. But you can take from his bias because they made an erev, they just didn't make an erev together. So then you can take things from the one bias into its own chotzer, but you cannot take it through the house into the other chotzer. If, however, the erev was munach in that house, then that joins everything together, and then no problem. Fine. Continues the Mechaber. Second bottom line. Now, if you've got between the two Chatzeros a wall of 10 tefachim height, or if the other chotzer is just higher, imagine it's on a hill or something like that, it's higher by 5 tefachim, then ein yecholim la'ariv yachad. Then you can't make an eruv together. Let's do the Mishnah on that. Mem Aleph. Ben shtei Chatzeros kaisel. So you've got a kaisel. He's got a picture of it here. If you look at picture 18, there it's higher up. So you've got a lower, 5 tefachim ground, and he builds a 5 tefach wall. So you've got that. If you look, I'll pass it around. Picture number 18. Yeah. So in that says the Mishnah Berurah, Memalav hoy ben shtei chatzeros kaisel, ubezeh einaf geminim a kaisel rochav aboila. It doesn't make a difference in this situation if the top of the wall is 4 tefachim or not. Tafilu mechitza daka. Even if you've got a thin mechitza, mafsekes bein chatzeros kimin shegvei asar. At the end of the day, if you've got a 10 tefach wall between the two, then that divides it. Gevei asar tefachim, whether it's just a regular wall of 10 tefachim, the pachos mizeh, because less than that, lo choshev hefsek, echad. Because if it's less than 10 tefachim, then you can ignore it and you just treat it as one big chotzer. Or ma'arvin echad ve'ein ma'arvin shnayim, and you make one erev and you don't make two. V'asu olav, the kaimelon, this is mem gimel, the kaimelon, the mechitza mitzaref lahatel lahashlim lasar. The mechitza can contribute towards the height of 10 tefachim, like in the picture. You've got you've got two chatzeros next to each other. The lower one is 5 tefachim lower, so you've got 5 tefachim to start with, and then you build a mechitza of 5 tefachim, so you've got a wall of 10 tefachim. Ein yechelim. Who Adin says Mishmur Memdalad Kashegavur Mechaver Asar B'le Mechitza. Or imagine there was no mechitza; it was just on a bigger incline, and there was 10 tefachim lower than the other one. That would also count, and therefore you would that would be a mechitza between the two. Okay, back to the Mechaba, top line. V'im Haya Hakaisel Gavur L'Shnehem Asara. If you've got a wall between the two chatzeros, which is 10 tefachim high, and you've got, and on top of that wall, you've got fruit. Then both residents in each chatzer can take the fruit from on top of the middle wall and bring it into their chatzer. And they can actually take the fruit, which as Shabbos came in, they were in their chatzer, and they could put it onto the wall. And they can take it from that middle wall then into the other chatzer. Whether it's 4 tefachim wide or not. Okay, so let's just the Mishnah on that. Memhei, so the fruit which is on top of the wall, they're allowed to bring down into their chatzer. Because again, we've said that the premise of the very beginning of this simon is that we paskin like Reb Shimon, and a gag and a chatzer and a karpov is all considered one rishus. So therefore, I can take from one chotzer to another chotzer, one gag to a chotzer or to another gag, no problem. And that's what I'm doing over here. And the top of this wall is treated no differently to a gag, and therefore I can take from a gag to a chotzer. But I can only take into to a chotzer, but I can't take in from the chotzer or from the gag or from the top of this wall into the bayis, imhu rochav arba, that I can't do. Memvav or I can take it down from there. Because we said in the beginning of this simon that all the chatzeros and the gag is all considered like one rishus. Okay, back to the Mechaba. Avol Paris, 4th line. Surely.
It means one person of the chotzer can put it on the wall, and the other person can take it.
Yeah.
From the other.
Yes. Because they're all considered it's going from, in the way you just described, it's going from chotzer to gag to chotzer. It's all one rishus. Okay, back to the Mechaba, 4th line down. Avol Peirus sheshovsu b'bayis, but the Peirus, which when Shabbos came in, were in the house. Im hakaisa rochav abba. If the top of this wall is 4 tefachim, then osa lahalus lo. Then you can't put it on there. Nor can you bring it down from there. Then mutzah, because we'll see the Mishnah says it's got to do with the mokum patur, and the mokum patur is okay. But you can't sort of put it onto this mokum patur and then be machalif and take it into the next chotzer. Says the Mishnah Berurah Mem Zayin, hakoyse rochav arba pirush arba tefachim v'hatam, and the reason why now there's a problem because rochav arba who mokum choshev is considered a significant place, a mokum choshev b'fnei atzmai, ve'ena bottle legabi shnei chatzeros. Therefore, you can't bring things from the house onto the top of this wall. But if it was less than 4 tefachim wide, says the Mishnah Berurah Memches, to bepachas me'arba makom patur, less than that, like I just said, is a makom patur. Umuta laha'alois min abatim, olav l'redim min abatim, to and from a makom patur, you're actually okay. Memtes shelo yachlifa, as long as you're not machlif. Says the Mishnah Berurah Hainu laha'alois min abatim ala koisel, to take from the houses onto the wall, and then take them into the next chotzer. Because otherwise you might come to carry directly from the bias into the second chotzer, without resting in between, and that's not allowed. That is exactly the problem. That is caught as an issa drabonin. Whether or not you can put it on the Mokum Patur and then take it down to the next chotzer. There are actually 2 opinions about this. It seems from the Ramah over here that we are machmir. Okay, back to the Mechaba. We're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down towards the end of the line. V'im hoya hakoisel. Says the Mechaba. V'im hoya hakoisel gavoya la'achas me'achatzeres asara. Now, if the koisel was for one of the Chatzeros 10 tefachim high, v'leshnia eina gavei asara, and for the other one it was not. Kagoin shekarkoi shel echod gavei mishal chaverei. For example, the floor of one Chatzer was higher. Mi she'eina gavei le asara. Then, if the for the Chatzer where the wall is not 10 tefachim high, mutar lishtamish boy af b'kelim sheshos b'bayis. Then you can use in it even those kalim that were in the house from before Shabbos. I think I've got a picture of it here. Let me just quickly find it. Yeah. Again, you've got here's picture number 21. You can picture 21, where you've got the floor of one is here is 21 is lower than the other one. So that's what he's describing. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Nun Muta Af Bekelim or Mayri Kashiver Al Atzma. We're talking about a situation where each bias, each chotzer made its own erev with a bottom in that chotzer. Timlo erev also made bias the chotzer, because if you didn't make an erev, then you can't take anything from the bias to the chotzer. For kolshken and mechitza, and certainly not to the mechitza, sheshovsu bebias that it's day nechshav reish hakoisel kakarka chotzer, because for him your mechitza is less than 10 tvachim, so therefore it's just considered like a chotzer. It's like if anything less than 10 tvachim you can ignore, and it's like taking from the bias to the ground of the chotzer. Kim she'enik v'asar tvachim v'nichel elishtamesham. It's nichel elishtamesham. Good. Okay. Now back to the mechaba. We're in the last Vasheni, also Lishtamish boy, after Kalim Sheshavs B'chotzer. But the second guy, where the Mechitza is 10 Tvachim tall, then he can't. Says the Mishnah Berurah Nun Beis, after Kalim, Dohail V'shachaveru Muta Me'abayas the Mechitza. Now why not? Because the first guy, he's allowed to take from his bias to the Mechitza, because it's less than 10 Tvachim, and therefore it's as if he's taking from his bias to the Chotzer. He made an erev, no problem. If we allow the second guy to do that, then you're essentially having 2 rishuyos, i.e. both Chatzeros using this middle mechitza, and then memele yasar rishon lohitzim bias the mechitza kim she'ever kol echad ve'echad latzma, and then they answer each other. Valkein ef sheshu shneim yicholin l'shtamish lav. You can't have both of them using it, and so who do we choose to give it to? For nois narishus l'shtamish l'zeh mishtamish nicha lo b'yoseh, which is a klal there in Erevin, that if you've got a choice who to give it to, you give it to the person whose usage is easier. Noach l'shtamish boy. And since the first guy, his wall is lower than 10 tvachim, it's easier for him to use the chotzer. In the name of the Rashba, he allows the second guy to use it to some degree, i.e. for those kelim that were in the chotzer when Shabbos came in. Okay, let's just finish off this mechaba. Last line. Now that's only when the koisel is 4 tvachim wide. Says the Mishnah Berurah Nun Gimel, mutar lishtamish to have a makom patur, because when it's less than 4 tvachim, it's going to makom patur, and therefore that would be okay. All right, let's just do zayin. Nifratz HaKaisel. So now you've got two chatzeros next to each other, and you've got batim in each chatzer, but then the wall in between these two chatzeros is breached. So the rule is, ad ese amas, if their breach is less than 10 amas, then hariu kapesach. Then it's just like a doorway, it's like an entrance, a doorway between the two chatzeros, and no problem. So long as it's not a breach of the entire length of the wall. But if the breach is more than 10 amas, then you can't call it a Pesach anymore, and it's just it's treated as one big chotzer with lots of houses in it. And therefore they have no choice but to make one big eruv together. They cannot make two separate eruvim. And certainly, if you haven't got a mechitza which is more than 10 tefachim, then again it's as if it's not there, and tzrichin arav yachad. Okay, so can you picture it? You've got two chatzeros, one next to each other, and there's a wall in between them. So then they can make two separate eruvim. They can choose to make one big one together, but they can make they can with reshit of vus, whatever. But they're treated as two separate as chatzeros. But if there's a breach of more than 10 tefachim, of more than 10 amas, then that's considered like one big chotzer, and they have to. If it's less than 10 amas, then it's considered like a Pesach, and it's as if they're two separate chatzeros. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Nun Daled, Ad Esev, Ad Bichlal, is up to and including 10 amas. Haruk Pesach, Valkein, Im Rotzu Ma'arvin Shtayim, if they want to make two separate eruvim, they can, Im Rotzu Ma'arvin Yachad, and if they want to make one, they can. V'chanal b'sif Dalet, like we said in Sif Dalet. Shelo yehi nifrat, so long as it's got to be less than 10 amas, and it's not the entire length of the wall. The im nifrat's b'milua, because if it was the entire length of the wall, afilu pachas me'esa amas, even if it was less than 10 amas, tzrichas la'arav yachad dafka, because there's nothing there. There's less than 10. If it's nifrat's b'milua, then it's fully open. B'miluay aval kain, but in the sheishtayim it called sad mashu. So you've got to have something remaining to be able to consider it two separate chatzeros. And how much you need? The mashu on each side. Or even on one side, a board of 4 tefachim of height 10 tefachim. The belav hachi, because without that, hariu kumosh nifras b'miluay, it's considered totally open. Okay, but if the breach is more than 10 amas, pirush even it's a massive wall, and you've got double, treble, quadruple the amount of wall connected the breach, but once you've got a breach of more than 10 amas, that is no longer a Pesach, and that joins the two areas together. Hakol choshev kanofel. It's as if the whole thing's fallen down. Ve'enza pesach elapirza, and therefore it's considered one chotzer. Yachad. What's this going on? This is going on the end. V'tzrichim la'arev yachad. So if you've got a pirza of more than 10 amas, you can only do one erev together. Te'im erevu kol echad la'atzmai. Because if each one did their own little eruv, then they asa on each other because they're sort of open to each other. If, however, they fixed it up by making a tzuras pesach where there's breaches, choshev kapesach, then it is indeed considered a pesach and it's blocked off. And therefore, if they wanted to, they can make two separate eruvim. Im ein beinehem. This is now going on the Ramah. The Ramah says, if you haven't got a wall of 10 tefachim between them, then it's certainly considered like one big chotzer. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sifkot and Samach, v'uadin im kol ha'mechitza gevei asar tefachim. So too, if you've got a wall which is 10 tefachim high, ela sheyesh ba'osim mokum rochav yosem me'esa amas she'ein begoven asar tefachim. It's just that it dips. The wall dips between them for a duration of more than 10 amas, of lower than 10. It goes lower than 10 tefachim. Harihu choshev kapirtzu gemura. That's considered like a proper breach, a proper opening. But tzrichas la'arav yachad dafka, and then again you've got to make one big eruv. Seder? Okay, we'll leave it there.